This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rid of the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up the
Oh my God!
Oh, big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's going to get full!
Section's very close. These guys are going to want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, here we go! Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my God!
God, what?
After a hard-fought third season, we've taken a couple weeks break and it's time to get straight back into it. This Tuesday night on SimSpeed TV, thanks to Scumander Coffee Mug and Hot Toddy's heating installs, it is the first round of the fourth season of the Pro Truck Showdown series. Fixed setup racing at road courses in the Lucas Oil Off-Road Pro 2 trucks. To bring you the show this season, once again, it's myself, Reese Gardner, with Cameron Dance alongside me in the commentary box. Well, Cam, we're racing at the boot layout, the classic boot layout of Watkins Glen International once again in this series. Always provides fantastic racing in these trucks with big drafting zones and heavy braking zones through the boot section.
Watkins Glen so many times throughout this series, and every time it's put up awesome racing, no matter whether it's the cup layout, the boot layout, the classic boot or whatnot. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what tonight's going to show, and looking forward to the entire season as well. It's been a little bit of an off break since we've last covered this, so looking forward to getting back into it.
Absolutely, and it follows the regular format that we've come to expect from this series. 3 heats of racing, 5 laps, 7 laps, and 9 laps, and all decided by a 6-minute qualifying session, which the drivers are in at the moment. They all get 1 lap each to set their grid spot for the first race. And a bit of an interesting note here, Cam. Fuel might be an issue in the longest race of the night, the final one. We're not entirely clear on whether the trucks have enough fuel in them to actually get to the finish without having to make a stop.
Might see a little bit of fuel, so we might see some pit stops, we might see people running out of fuel, who knows, but it's certainly going to spice up race 3, that's for sure. The fact that people are going to have to be a little bit conscious of how much fuel they've got in the tank, and hopefully you don't have to end up in Win Cup territory.
Yes, indeed. Reigning champion Glen Postlethwaite is not present tonight, so we've got Brenton Hobson here on screen, the sole representative of Synergy Sim Racing, and he's just started his single qualifying lap. Hobbo topped the practice session at 207.362, his fastest time. Be interesting to see what he can pull out in this session. Nice and flat out through the S's, opening the lap here at Watkins Glen, and then the long back straight. We're not using the bus stop chicane on this particular layout, so nice and flat out all the way through to the fast downhill carousel corner. You've got to brake a little bit earlier than you think you need to and try and keep yourself nice and tight to the inside of this corner. A little bit of a bowl in the corner as well, which allows you to carry a little more speed. But we've always seen some fantastic side-by-side racing through this here boot section.
Well, we certainly have some very, very close battles and some awesome racing over the course of time at Watkins Glen, and in the boot especially. It offers up a few passing opportunities, the likes of the toe of the boot here. You can certainly fire one up the inside, and it's a corner that you can also decide to use more than one line as well, which will be interesting to see who decides to do what in that department. But certainly Homo looking like it's a pretty good lap at the moment, and looking like he might be able to put it on pole, but we'll have to wait and see as he's coming through the final section of the boot.
Yeah, that's one of the best overtaking opportunities on the boot right there. A heavy braking zone, and again into this very difficult left-hander. Hobbo runs slightly wide on entry, but hooks it up for a late apex, getting the best possible run here through the last 2 turns. Once we're back onto the main layout of the circuit, banked second last corner. You can use all of the curb there on the exit, but Hobbo's keeping it nice and clean. And then through the final corner, you've got a wall waiting for you on the outside, so you've got to take a bit of care on the exit. The first time is in Todd Maxfield with a 2:08.8, and Brenton Hobson is going to smash that with a 2:07.658. brilliant time there. The only driver in the 207 so far in this qualifying session, with 14 trucks here tonight. Philip Howe going to come across the line and set a 2-minute 10.7, which puts him currently second last of the drivers that have set times. Riccardo Morganti on a 2:12.05. Our good friend Ryan Jones currently sitting in the commentary box with us at SimSpeed TV. If you hear him shout at some point in the race, you will know that he's had an incident somewhat resembling what we just saw there. Daniel Stevens, driver who has had some rotten luck in this series. He's had a bit of a trend where he's put sausage rolls on the side of his MFR truck for every single flip he's had, but he's had some actually pretty good results in the last couple of rounds of the season. He could definitely fight for podiums in this thing.
And when things go his way and he is not adding extra sausage rolls to that truck of his, he can certainly be fighting for podiums and that, and be up the pointy end of the field, and puts himself in P4 with that lap at 2:08.435.
Excellent stuff there, and doesn't look like anyone is coming close to challenging Brenton Hobson here, as Gavin Sadler sets a mid 2:09 to put himself in 8th position. Hobson 0.6 of a second ahead of everyone else as the qualifying session is now over. And we can take a look at the starting grid. It's Brenton Hobson and Justin Howe on the front row here. Hobbo with a dominant qualifying performance. Look out for him to challenge for the race win. Ryan Jones setting a time good enough for 3rd, with Daniel Stevens alongside him on the 2nd row. Damien Westbrook and Gregory Favell on the 3rd row of the grid, 5th and 6th there. Then we go to Todd Maxfield and Gavin Sadler on row 4, and then Philip Howe and Riccardo Morganti, 9th and 10th. The last 4 drivers having not set times in the qualifying session: Sander Vantia, Ben Snell, Brian Trezise, and Lockie Dalton, a race winner last season. So we'll have to wait and see if those guys end up taking to the grid. It looks like Devantia and Trezise are sitting on the grid as everyone gets ready to go. We've got a minute left to go in this gridding period, so we got a bit of extra time here. Just have a quick chat about what it's like on the first lap here at Watkins Glen. It's a reasonable run into turn 1, and it's quite a quick turn with a lot of runoff on the exit, which often, Cam, results in drivers pushing a bit too hard off the race start.
Leaves open the opportunity to go in a little bit too deep into turn 1 and use that runoff to your advantage, although the rejoin can sometimes create a little bit of havoc, as we've seen in the past in various other series, but it certainly does make it a little bit more easier for drivers to have a go at turn 1 rather than being a little bit more cautious and having to try and avoid the grass on either side. So either way, it usually does provide good racing and a good opportunity for passing as well, but nevertheless, we'll see what happens here.
Indeed we shall. Getting very close now. 10 seconds left on the gridding period as we're still waiting for Ben Snell and Lockie Dalton to get on the grid. I don't know if they'll actually take to the grid in this first race or if we'll see them at all tonight, but the timer has hit 0. Now it's time for the standing start. Very challenging in these trucks. The revs rise. 5 laps for race 1 of the Pro Truck Showdown Season 4 is go, and it's a nice even start from pretty much every driver. The top 4 though getting away slightly better and almost moving to the inside there. Ryan Jones, Daniel Stevens tries to stick it in around the outside as Justin Howe attempts to take the lead from Brenton Hobson. Hobbo though with the quicker line through the corner, he gets it done. Gregory Favell, meanwhile, has moved ahead of Damien Westbrook. That's an extra position for him coming up into the S's, but Favell's pushed a bit too hard through the right-hander. That's allowed Westbrook to get back alongside, but Westbrook gets a bit of contact from behind from Todd Maxfield, and that made contact with Favell, so he's been shuffled back an extra couple of positions. Now, down the back straight, here we go. The bump drafting is on. We've got Justin Howe and Brenton Hobson bump drafting each other. So are Jones and Stevens. Stevens pulls out round the outside and taking the wider line there through the carousel, gets on the throttle very nicely, and unfortunately for him, it looks like it hasn't worked out, but the top 4 well and truly have broken away from the rest of the field. Damien Westbrook heading up the pack.
Definitely hitting up the pack at the moment, and probably doing a fantastic job at the front as well, holding off Justin Howe, but can't discount any of those 2 behind Daniel Stevens and Jones getting up and amongst it as Howie's run a little bit wide on the way through the toe of the boot. And that's going to allow Jones to try and have a go on the way down towards the heel, but he's going to decide to think better of it. Might have to go defensive as Stevens logging to the inside on Jones as they cut head in towards the heel, and Jones going to sweep around the outside and keep that position off Stevens.
Good defense there from Ryan Jones, able to keep it round the outside. Justin Howe, though, pushing a bit too hard into the left-hander. He's lost a bit of grip and allowed Brenton Hobson to get away slightly. They want to be less than a second behind for the draft to work as they come up to the end of the lap now. Looks like Damien Westbrook has broken away from Gavin Sadler there in 5th place, and we're starting to assume some single file running in the second half of the grid. Looked like a really good exit from Todd Maxfield. He's going to be in the draft now of Gavin Sadler going into the first turn for 5th and 6th position. A move to the inside for Gregory Favell. Oh, he has to back out of it, though, because Maxfield cutting across the front of him there, using all of the runoff area and then some. That's going to give another run there to Favell coming up through the S's, but the contact is there. Favell has been sent a little wide. That almost gives a chance to Sam Devantia. Doesn't look like it's going to happen until we get to the carousel. The top 4, meanwhile, looks like Stevens going for a move for 3rd there on Ryan Jones, getting up the inside. Coming into the carousel, Justin Howe doing the same thing to Brenton Hobson here. Move for the lead, move for 3rd. Which of them is going to be successful? Looks like Justin Howe has got it. And Stevens has gotten Jones too.
He's only just managed to get Hobbo, has Justin Howe, but Stevens with a very, very good move to get on it by Ryan Jones. And Jones going a little bit deep on the way into the corner as well. But that battle pack behind still going on at the moment. Sadler leading it with Devantia all over his tail, as well as Philip Howard and everybody else trying to scrap for those minor positions too, as Devantia tries to be a little bit defensive on Philip Howard, a little bit of argy going on for good measure as well. And Philip Howard's going to try and slip up the inside of Devantia and possibly even Sadler as they head down towards the heel of the boot.
Well, there's a good run there from Gregory Favell, but it's blocked by Devantia and Howe, and the lead is on again. Brenton Hobson moving just ahead of Justin Howe as they come into the left-hander. Howie's going to defend the lead there, but Hobbo a little bit earlier on the throttle. Great traction there in the number 88 truck, retakes the lead. And we switched back briefly to see Ben Snell exiting the pits. He's a late starter to this one. He's lost a lap to everyone else, but at the very least, he is going to get a race finish on the board with now the start of lap 3 of 5. These races are short and sweet. And I'm going to be monitoring lap times here because we'll have to wait and see if Damien Westbrook can try and catch this top 4 up. He's in a bit of a no-man's land at the moment, and the top 4 are going to be helping each other quite a bit with the amount of drafting that they're doing. Westbrook's just too far behind to take advantage of it.
That looks to be the case at the moment, but if anything does happen between those top 4, he should be able to get within their draft range and also be able to possibly challenge for the podium or even the top 4, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But Daniel Stevens going for the move on Justin Howe on the way down the back straight, and he's going to try and get it up the inside. Might even go for Hobbo as well. Not quite going to be able to get Hobbo, but we'll certainly get Justin Howe. And Ryan Jones going to try and get both of them now, sitting in the background. Not quite going to be able to get a move it done though. And Stevens trying it around the outside now as how he's held his own at the carousel, and he's going to get that position back off him.
Well, there we go. Some great battling at the front of the field, and great battling in this pack behind. Sadler unfortunately sent wide and into the wall. Coming into the boot section, he's lost touch with Gregory Favell, Sam Devantia and Todd Maxfield ever so briefly. But now have a look at Devantia going up the inside of Gregory Favell on the exit of the toe of the boot. Not quite able to take advantage though. That's one of the turns where being on the outside, if anything, is an advantage.
And it's a little bit of an advantage with the fact that you get that drive off the corner, but it's also a little bit of a disadvantage with the fact that you're on the slightly less cambered side of the road as well. So you've got to try and really wheel it through there, but nevertheless he's managed to make that work that time by. But front of the field. It's still a single file affair, and now still trying to pressure Hobson into a mistake, which doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon, but it's still very, very close. And they only 2 to go this time by.
Indeed they are. 5-lap first race, of course. It goes by in an absolute flash. And the top 4 a bit more spaced out than they were a lap ago, but Justin Howe having a brief look at Brenton Hobson there, trying a bit of mind games. If you can move around in your rival's mirrors, you can potentially distract them and force them into a mistake. And look at how much grass they're all taking there on the exit of turn 1. That's an off-track 1X, I think, for every single driver in the top 4. It's going to be on for the lead again, though, coming onto the back straight, because Justin Howe is right behind Brenton Hobson here. Goes a bit wide in the right-hander. But now the draft comes into play. Is the bump draft going to happen? No. Howie's going to go right for it here, side by side on the run up to the carousel. They go over the crest coming into the corner and jump on the brakes. Hobson a little bit later goes a little deeper into the corner. You want to be on the outside on the exit of this turn because it gives you the inside for the next one. Using all of the curb on the exit is Brenton Hobson and goes down in the brakes for fantastic maneuver down the inside. Tight on entry and opens up on exit there in the boot, and Justin Howe has to take a little bit of the grass to keep his forward momentum going. Checking back in on Damien Westbrook meanwhile as this battle goes on. Westbrook's fallen back into the clutches of Favell and Devantier, who have put on some fantastic lap time here over the last lap. Gregory Favell into the 207s now. Devantier made a little bit of a mistake there at the toe of the boot, but Westbrook might be in trouble here for a top 5 finish.
He might just be in a little bit of strife in the next lap or so with the fact that he's got people starting to claw onto the back end of his truck there, so we'll have to keep an eye and see what happens. But looking to the inside on the way through is Favell and gives him a little bit of a hip check as well for good measure, and that's going to allow as well Devantier to try and get up the inside on the way through the second last corner, and he's going to slot on by Westbrook as well. So 2 for the price of 1, unfortunately, for Westbrook there.
Yeah, 2 positions lost in pretty much a single corner. So now Gregory Favell moves up into position 5. Leaders then start their final lap here. And another quick look by Justin Howe on Brenton Hobson. You see how much more curb Justin Howe takes than Hobbo, trying to get an advantage there. And oh, big move at turn 1 there for Westbrook, going to try and get back past Sam Devantier. It's not going to work out for him though. So he's going to have to wait now until the carousel at the end of the straight for another move. Though Devantier running a little bit wide there in the S's. Lead is on again. Justin Howe has the draft on Brenton Hobson and moves out to the middle of the circuit. Daniel Stevens with a massive advantage there. A double draft from both of these guys. Hinted at making it 3 wide for a second there, but Stevens is a very seasoned and safe racer. He knows exactly where to put his car in situations like that, and Justin Howe holding on to take the lead there from Hobbo. Stevens tries forcing himself up the inside of Brenton Hobson. It doesn't work though. Brenton Hobson with a great exit here on the inside. They're going to be side by side into the toe of the boot, and another one of the corners where the outside line has the advantage, but Justin Howe goes a little bit deeper into the turn. Brenton Hobson tries to straighten it up and get some momentum off the exit, and immediately defensive again from Justin Howe. This is going to be a very hard fought lead towards the finish. Hobbo with the momentum coming into the braking zone. Stevens a little bit later on the brakes, wondering if Ryan Jones can have a look in here if the top 3 end up coming together. Hobson again with the great exit from the heel of the boot, retakes the lead, and they all run a bit wide of the apex of the corner, but a late apex again from all of them. There's only going to be one more chance left here at the final turn. We'll see if Justin Howe can get the braking that he needs and take this away from Brenton Hobson. No, he's not. A little bit of a bump there at the apex of the final corner, and they are all together across the line. Well, it's going to be Brenton Hobson who takes victory here at Watkins Glen. Justin Howe pulls out of the draft, but it's not going to be enough. There is your top 3, only covered by a fraction of a second. Ryan Jones taking a strong 4th there, and Gregory Favell manages to complete the top 5. It looks like Westbrook lost another position there on the final lap to Todd Maxfield.
That was done earlier in the lap as well, so unfortunately he's going to come home in 7th is Westbrook, but a very, very close fight at the front of the field, and you really didn't know who was going to win that in the end with how hard Justin Howe and Hobson were fighting.
Absolutely. These are your unofficial results then for race 1. Hobson, Howe, Stevens, Jones and Favell, your top 5 with Devantia, Maxfield, Westbrook, Sadler and Philip Howe, the father of Justin, completing the top 10. Brian Trezise comes home in 11th. Ricardo Morganti finishes in 12th, and Ben Snell a lap down. Had to start from the pits, but he does have a classified finish on the board. Hopefully we can see Lockie Dalton make an appearance tonight, because an extra truck on the grid is never a bad thing. It's time then for race 2, and we're not going to bother going through the grid because it's exactly the same as the finishing order of race 1. 7 laps this one, and a couple of extra laps to play with, a few extra chances to go for a move. But when we get to that 9-lap final race, watch out for a bit of fuel saving from some drivers. There's been a little bit of controversy over fuel numbers in the past, but Justin Howe is going to want to go for the move on Brenton Hobson and really make it stick.
Yeah, he certainly is going to want to go for it and try and get a race win here over Brenton Hobson after that massive scrap in that previous race. So certainly going to be looking forward to seeing what's going to happen and who's going to be the victor in race 2.
Well, very short gridding period for this one. And we see 13 of our 14 drivers making their way onto the field here as the timer hits 0. Ben Snell starting from the back. He's a former race winner in this series. He knows what it's like to work his way up through the field. The revs rise and away we go. It's a fantastic start from Brenton Hobson this time around. He really nailed that start. Justin Howe, though, with a bit of extra wheel spin, is going to leave the door open to Daniel Stevens. He turns in, and the cork in the bottle as everyone files through turn 1. Ryan Jones just behind Daniel Stevens as he was in race 1. Ben Snell is already making up positions. He's just moved past Brian Trezise, almost knocked him wide into the wall. Damien Westbrook, who lost those positions on the final lap last race, right in the draft of Philip Howe, looking to stick with this pack. There goes Daniel Stevens with the move on the inside of Justin Howe, going for second place. Potentially a win here in race 2 of 3. A little bit later on the brakes, but Justin Howe carries the car a bit deeper into the carousel. Big oversteer. With these trucks, they run dirt racing tyres, so not much grip to speak of. Really got to be careful with the weight transfer, especially through fast corners like this. Takes a lot of talent to wheel a truck around Watkins Glen fast as Daniel Stevens and Ryan Jones both get into the grass. That has allowed Gregory Favell now up into the top 4.
Certainly very, very good move by Favell to get up into the top 4. Mistake from Jones really wasn't needed. Well, the mistake that he wanted at the end of the day, but Favell looking to try and go up the inside of Daniel Stevens now as Gregory Favell decides to think better of it and just slot in behind. And that's Sadler in the background as well, having problems.
Oh dear. Yeah, Gavin Sadler's been forced quite a ways back there. Looked like some contact in the braking zone, well actually way before it. If the action calms down, I get a replay of that one. Sadler moved across Philip Howe to try and defend, but they banged wheels and got stuck in each other. So now they've lost quite a bit of time, and that's gifted Ben Snell another couple of positions. He's just behind Damien Westbrook now.
He's just right in behind Westbrook at the moment. He'll try and catch up to him on the way down the front straight, down the back straight as well this time around. Shouldn't have too many problems with it, but nevertheless it's still going on at the front of the field as Stevens nearly running into the back of Justin Howe there on the way into turn 1, and that's going to allow Favell to really have a proper go on the way up the S's and down the back straight. And same with Ryan Jones, who's going to possibly have his hands full with Maxwell and Vantier as they head down towards the carousel.
Justin Howe did not have the best run through the S's there as we are on board with Ryan Jones. He moves out beside Gregory Favell and has the momentum coming out of the corner. Fantastic stuff. Favell is a sitting duck at the moment. Now he's got Todd Maxfield running up the inside, and Maxfield almost going to force it 3 wide here on the run into the carousel. Bumps Favell off the circuit. Ryan Jones gives Maxfield a hip check himself, and both of them are forced to recover. Fortunately, no big crash there. Everyone can continue continue as normal. But the battle really is for those second and third positions as Justin Howe tries his best to defend from Daniel Stevens, both of them getting off the circuit and into the wall. Stevens is going to take advantage of that and fling himself up the inside into the toe of the boot. Justin Howe on the throttle a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, he's broken traction a bit, and that allows Stevens to draw up even alongside him. And if Ryan Jones would be looking at this thinking, oh, maybe these guys will come together and I can get myself 2 positions for the price of 1. Justin Howe flinging it in there. Have a look at how deep Ryan Jones went. He has gotten right up to the back of those guys. But the battle between Howe and Stevens is going to continue. This is allowing Brenton Hobson to really get away as Justin Howe secures second for the time being.
Yeah, for the time being is the very, very main point of that, because it's probably going to change as they head down the back straight towards the carousel. This time, Brian Hobson's managed to build a little bit of a gap as a result of those two fighting in the last half a lap or so. So Hobson going to be trying to get away from these guys as best as he can, trying to break the draft now, even on the way down the front straight by moving to the inside, doing a little bit of weaving, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens when they get down to the carousel to see whether that gap does indeed close up to Hobson between himself and Howe. But Stevens is certainly not going to give this one up, and nor is Ryan Jones or anyone behind it, because look at the massive train behind.
Yeah, absolutely. Westbrook and Maxfield almost came together in turn 1, forced each other into the runoff through the left-hander in the S's. You've got to be very careful of that wall right there on the exit of the turn. That's what Justin Howe almost went into on the last lap, which helped to ruin his run. But it is quite the train here. We ride on board with Gregory Favell. He has got Sam Devantier and Ryan Jones up ahead of him. Daniel Stevens has gone a bit too deep into the carousel and has run wide. That's allowed them to gain an extra few tenths on the number 3.
Certainly has allowed them to gain a little bit of extra, but it's certainly bound to change and suddenly decrease very, very quickly, and Howard dropping another 2 wheels into the dirt. Same with Ryan Jones. Everybody really struggling to get the truck to rotate through that corner, but it's all on at the moment for Ryan Jones. He's trying to get away from Favell and Devantier, but they're harassing the back of that truck like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, this is a great battle here for 4th on back. Devantier is forced to go defensive here versus Favell. And they are very late on the brakes, almost going into the back of Ryan Jones, and Devantier forced to take the tight line, has lost momentum. That's allowed Gregory Favell to slip through and take 5th position. Justin Howe, meanwhile, has absolutely nailed this lap as, the number 99 coming almost through there on Gregory Favell. They remain in possession, but it's back on for the lead, as you can see up here on your screen. Brenton Hobson is now falling into the clutches of Justin Howe. We'll see what they can do. I'm surprised that Ben Snell has not made up as many positions as I expected. He is up into 9th, yes, which is a big improvement, as Justin Howe has one hell of a look at Brenton Hobson. But Snell doesn't seem to be advancing.
Really seem to be moving forward like I've seen him do in the past, or really have the pace to move through the field as well. He's done it to a 7.6 last time by, which compared to the leaders is actually on pace, but yeah, really, really odd to not see him moving through the field as quickly as we might have thought.
Well, it's on for the lead again. Justin Howe in the draft of Brenton Hobson, and they've really broken away from the rest of the field. Stevens is not able to catch up to them, and Ryan Jones will involve himself in the battle for the podium once again as Howe slips through on Hobbo to take the lead. Now he'll have to move to the inside here to protect. Brenton Hobson tries to find a lane there on the outside of the circuit, but nothing doing for him for the moment. Let's see if Howe gets a nice clean exit this time around. Well, they both dip wheels into the grass, but at least Howe didn't get into the wall that time by.
Yeah, very, very lucky to not end up in the guardrail again, but very good move to move into the lead of the race over Hobson, who's now going to have his attempt at trying to get his way back into the lead of this race. And Daniel Stevens and Ryan Jones not too far behind as well, so if those two do keep on battling, they'll find themselves back with being inside of a top 4 battle.
Indeed they will. Let's see then Howe going for the late apex once again. And you see just how close this battle for third is. If there's any kind of mistake from Stevens or Jones, Favell and Devantier will be in contention for a podium. So it's all to play for here in the second race of the night. And over the second half of the lap, they've started to catch up to Hobson, who hasn't quite stayed with Justin Howe. But once they get to the long back straight, he's going to get back into that draft. Let's see what goes on into turn one, as that is a pit stop there for Ben Snell. I'm not quite sure what that's for. Certainly fuel is not an issue tonight, as Favell gets up the inside of Jones on the exit of turn one. Favell has to lift off, get on the brakes a bit here, and they continue their side-by-side run through the S's. But have a look at the run through the left-hander. Favell slips on ahead. That was quite a nice move, but Ryan Jones is going to have the draft, the side draft as well, on the run up to the carousel. Let's see if Devantier can take advantage of this. It has allowed Stevens in third to skip away slightly. But up to the braking zone they go, and Jones goes very deep into the carousel. Oh, hit check there from Gregory Favell, and that knocks him back behind Devantier for the time being. He's probably going to slip ahead in the next braking zone, but Ryan Jones seems safe there in fourth, for now.
Yes.
Penalty.
Trying to do something, but it sounds like Ben Snell's been given a penalty according to the man in the hot seat in fourth at the moment, and Sadler as well. So a few penalties being dished out by the sound of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So obviously race control in the hot seat here. It might be for incident limits as well, as Stevens goes for the move then on Justin Howe at the heel of the boot. Didn't quite get alongside though, so it allows Justin Howe to slip on back ahead. The battle between Jones, Favell and Devantier more alive than ever, as Stevens tries to slip up the inside of Howe on the exit of the third last turn. Let's see if he can maintain that run here into the penultimate corner. Justin Howe goes a little bit deeper on the outside of the circuit, but keeps the momentum up. You can really keep the outside line going in these trucks. Stevens is going to lose a bit of speed on the exit of the final turn as they come around to start lap 6 of 7. Let's see if Jones, Favell and Devantier can catch up. Well, Favell isn't going to worry about that. He's going to dive down the inside of Ryan Jones and just give him enough room. There's a slight bit of contact between those guys, and Jones moves back ahead. Favell had to really back out of that to avoid hitting Jones off.
Yeah, he really did, and Jones probably going to be a little bit frustrated with that move as well, because it's now built a bit of a gap to Daniel Stevens and the rest of the top three, so they're going to have their work cut out to try and catch back up to the top three at this stage, and Favell's going to try and go for the move again on the way down towards the carousel. Jones going to be defensive.
They banged wheels there, and Favell was almost sent up on 2 wheels. Maintains the outside line though, and Jones though on the racing line moves on ahead, and again between Favell and Devantier it's a side-by-side run, but Devantier lifts off, lets Favell go. It's been quite the tough race for those guys. Haven't quite been able to move forward as they would have liked. Favell though on the outside of Jones coming into the toe of the boot. Doesn't get on the brakes much later than Jones does, but Ryan is sent wide in the second phase of the corner, and that allows Favell to get alongside him. Jones, though, keeps the momentum up on the exit, straightens out the wheel, and gets a great run down the straight. Let's see how deep they go then into the heel of the boot. Favell's a bit later on the brakes, and he just manages to pull it up. Sent a little bit wide, though. Oversteer, loss of traction. He's going to have to defend from Jones again.
He's going to have to defend and manage to hold on to that position from Jones. Does Favell for that corner at least, but Jones is going to be very, very hungry to get back on it by and move back into P4, and that move's probably going to happen on the next lap. But in front of the field, it's very, very close, and I'd say we're going to have a very, very hard fought fight again to the finish of the race.
Indeed, it is white flag for our race leaders, Brenton Hobson, Justin Howe and Daniel Stevens, your top three going into turn one. There's another brief look up the inside there from Ryan Jones, but Gregory Favell moves onto the racing line and keeps that position going. All right, let's focus on our leaders now. Let's see if Justin Howe can get into the draft of Brenton Hobson, get the run that he needs to go for this race win. Can Daniel Stevens in third stick with them as well? Onto the back straight then. Moving up past 200 kilometers per hour. The weave is on for Brenton Hobson, trying to break the draft there of Justin Howe, but the momentum is not stymied. Into the carousel. Looks like Howe not able to get alongside, so Hobson just parking it on the apex there, preventing him from trying to go past. Defensive line, maybe? No, he moves out, gives Justin Howe just a little bit of room there on the inside, but Howe not able to take advantage of it. There was just too narrow of a line there into that turn, off into the grass once again. As Favell now trying his best to defend from Ryan Jones. There's a few more braking zones left on this lap. And we're hearing that Philip Howe is slow at the moment as Hobson has to go on the outside. Justin Howe up the inside into the heel of the boot. They just avoid making contact with each other. And look at that, the traction once again from Brenton Hobson. Seems to be a master of putting the power down in these things. A little bit of a hip check and another from Justin Howe. Howe is showing that he is not done with Hobbo, and he wants at least one race win tonight. Hobson lifting off a bit early into the second last corner. Justin Howe almost hinted at a move into the final turn, but once again, it is going to be Brenton Hobson, Justin Howe, and Daniel Stevens, your top three here in race 2. Pretty much a mirror image of the race finish in race 1. But Ryan Jones managing to move back into 4th in the final stages of that last lap. So that's the same top 5, in fact the same top 6 even from your first race. Repeating there with Ben Snell coming across the line in 11th place. He'll be unhappy with that. Actually in 10th place then, because he's just moved ahead of Philip Howe. Gavin Sadler's going to be dissatisfied with that as well. The last finisher of our drivers here in race 2. Those are your results, exactly the same top 6 from this particular race as it was in race 1. Damien Westbrook moves up one position, though, from the previous race. Switching positions with Todd Maxfield. Brian Trezise gaining 2 positions. Ben Snell gaining 3. Philip Howe losing 1. Ricardo Morganti even there in 12th place, with Gavin Sadler losing 4 spots from his start to finish 13th. And we still haven't seen any sign of Lockie Dalton here tonight. Well then, that's the opening stage of the action here tonight in the Pro Truck Showdown. Next up is the 5-minute warm-up session, and then we go racing for a final 9 laps here tonight. We're going to go on a quick break here on SimSpeed TV while the drivers sort themselves out in this warm-up session. Thanks very much to Scumander Coffee Mug and Hot Toddy's Heating Installs. You're watching Season 4 of the Pro Truck Showdown.
Are you new to sim racing, or maybe a veteran struggling to reach the next level? Have you ever wondered how the aliens reach impressive lap times that seem impossible to achieve? If so, you're not alone. Most drivers reach a certain level and get stuck. But getting faster on track is easier than you think. VRS coaches are some of the best sim racers in the world and offer one-on-one driver skills training at affordable rates to help new drivers learn the basics and help experienced drivers break through to the next level. Are you ready to get faster and get off the iRacing roller coaster? If so, VRS one-on-one personal training is for you. If you've invested in your equipment, it might be time to invest in yourself. Just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a 30, 60 or 90-minute session with one of our world-class coaches, and you'll learn exactly what to do for faster lap times and more podiums.
Fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going in the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up to him! Oh my god! Oh, big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's
These guys I want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, here we go. Oh, no. That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh, my God.
God, what?
You're watching Pro Truck Showdown 4, Race 1 here from Watkins, Glen, and we're going immediately into a replay thanks to our friends at Virtual Racing School. This is what we think is the reason why Gavin Sadler got a drive-through penalty, because as you can see, he moves over on Philip Howe on lap 1, and then when the wheels connect, the trucks get stuck into each other, and Sadler smashed into the wall, as is Philip Howe. So very unfortunate between those two, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes when you race as hard as you do. But wondering if that might be the reason Sadler paid a visit to the pits, moving over on the straight a bit too early. Well, we are in the warm-up session between the second and third races here tonight, and Cam, I reckon that we might be seeing some exciting fuel strategy foibles in this 9-lapper. We're not too sure if the tank is big enough for them to make it entirely to the end going flat out.
Yeah, so you're probably going to find that you probably aren't going to want to lead this race, to be honest, or be in any sort of clean air. So if you're second or third or maybe even fourth in the train, you're going to be at a real advantage with the fact that you're going to be able to save a lot more fuel than everybody else around you. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, and might see the order shuffled by quite some margin, with the fact that some people might try and save as much as they possibly can to not pit, but who knows, we'll have to wait and see.
We certainly will. Oh, well, I mean, looking at the results from tonight, we had the exact same drivers in the top 6 in the exact same positions in both of our races tonight, but looking at the results alone doesn't tell the full story, because there was certainly some fantastic racing to get those results and some great fightbacks from the likes of Brian Jones to be able to get past Gregory Favell. But Favell and Devanti are buzzing around Jones's head like a couple of flies at the moment, really not helping his run there to try and get a top 3 here tonight.
Yeah, they're certainly making it life hard for Ryan, with the fact that they've been just in the background or getting involved in battles. So we'll have to see what they can do in this race, and whether they're going to be able to challenge for possibly even a podium.
That is the big question. We've got 30 seconds left then in this warm-up session before we get on the grid for the final race of the night. And drivers just doing a couple of laps out there to make sure that they have everything in order before they get started. A couple of them having a bit of an expression session as well. Ben Snell in particular, he's going for a big old drift through the carousel. We'll see if Ben there, going full on sideways, can improve on a 13th and a 10th here tonight.
Yeah, they're certainly going to want to try and get an improvement on their finishing positions tonight in this one final race to see what the deal, but we'll have to wait and see, especially with that pit stop, and seeing how that's going to all play out in the end.
Absolutely. Here's the starting grid. Brendan Hobson and Justin Howe are your top 2, with Daniel Stevens and Ryan Jones making up the second row. It's Gregory Favell and Sam Devanti are starting 5th and 6th, with Damien Westbrook in 7th, Todd Maxfield in 8th place. Brian Trezise and Ben Snell round out the top 10 here, with Philip Howe and Ricardo Morganti 11th and 12th, and Gavin Sadler is taking up the final spot on the grid, as there's still no sign of Lockie Dalton making it on the grid for tonight's racing. So then, only 16 seconds left until the green flag will fly, and now all of our drivers are on the grid. Ben Snell, the last one to get on the starting grid. The revs will rise, and we'll go racing who's going to take race 3 of the Pro Truck Showdown. It's been the Brenton Hobson show so far, and at least from that start, it looks like it's going to be, again, both Hobson and Howe breaking away from Stevens, who moves into a defensive line there from Ryan Jones. Trying around the outside is Gregory Favell on turn 1, but Jones straight lining his way out of the apex and gets back into 4th place. Brenton Hobson is going to have to be very careful here because there's an entire... whoa, there's been an incident in the back. It looks like Todd Maxfield, he's been tipped up and over on his roof, and fortunately, he manages to land on his wheels, but there's quite a bit of damage there. Looks like that was contact with Ben Snell in the first turn of the S's.
They're certainly not what he wanted. His Howe's 2 wheels in the dirt, down the back straight, trying to challenge for the lead. Jones going to go to the inside of Hobbo on the way into the carousel and try and take second at least, but Hobson going to hold it around the outside and is going to take that position straight back. It's going to be 2x2 on the way into the boot, and a bit of a shove from Ryan Jones on Daniel Stevens on the way in the braking zone.
Stevens held the lead for a grand total of 1 corner there, but shuffled back to 3rd, at least until they get to the braking zone for the toe of the boot. Let's see if he can maintain this fight for 2nd place with Justin Howe. This entire top pack is all together, and it's a bit of a mess here as Ben Snell has to go off track.
Oh, no.
Contact with Damien Westbrook. They've been sent around there. Ben Snell just avoiding being collected by Gavin Sadler and Ricardo Morganti, but he's all the way to the back of the train once again. That spaced people out, but Daniel Stevens still trying to go for it here on Mr. Howe, as that's Brian Trezise. He went off into the gravel trap at the heel of the boot. And contact between Howe and Stevens. That allows Ryan Jones finally into a top 3 position. He could potentially challenge for 2nd here, as Stevens is getting bumped out of the way massively by every driver that comes through. Gregory Favell now trying to challenge to take 4th place and manages to slip ahead of Stevens as they get to the corner proper. Brenton Hobson, though, in the lead with a 0.6 of a second gap over Justin Howe. Moving out to get the move done into turn 1 is Daniel Stevens. He's going to try and slip back past Gregory Favell, but it's not going to work out for him just yet. They're going to run side by side through the S's, and that's going to give a massive advantage to Sam Devantier behind and Ryan Jones in front.
Yeah, it's even going to allow Philip Howe to close in on that pack as well to make it a 4-car train for that 4th place position. But Jones is closing that gap down on Justin Howe, and Howe's closing that gap down on Hobson, and we'll see what Jones is going to do. He's going to sit in behind and save fuel by the looks of it. So a little bit of smart play there from Jones, and Howe closes that gap down to Hobson, but decides to slightly back out of it as well, and possibly trying to save a little bit of fuel. So all sorts of strategy going on here in these first few laps at least.
Absolutely. The top 5, actually top 8 really, all together in this battle, with Damien Westbrook just latching onto the back of them there with Philip Howe. So this is going to be, I think, one of the hardest fought races of the night. Brenton Hobson is only just holding on to the lead from Justin Howe. Ryan Jones has got his mirrors full of Gregory Favell and Daniel Stevens. Sam Devantier, Philip Howe and Damien Westbrook all taking up this fight here for 3rd on back. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah, it is very, very good to see, and it really is going to mix this order up, especially when those pit stops do come into it, because it's anybody's guess as to who's going to be the race winner, with the fact that you've got the entire top 8 nose to tail all the way through and separated by absolutely nothing.
Well, Brenton Hobson still holds on to a reasonable lead of about a truck length as they come around to the end of lap 2. And like you say, Cam, it is anyone's guess who is actually going to come away with this victory. I definitely think we're going to be seeing some shuffling for positions in the mid-pack, because have a look at Daniel Stevens, Philip Howe and Damien Westbrook as well. Westbrook probably going to go for a move on Howe into turn 1. Stevens manages to protect himself from Sam Devantier as Westbrook slips on through and takes 7th place from Philip Howe. It looks like Philip doesn't have much of a response to that. But have a look at the top 4 here. Gregory Favell latching onto the back of the top 3 and starting to leave Daniel Stevens and Sam Devantier in the dust. Brenton Hobson He's going to have to watch out here because Justin Howe's got the momentum in the draft. What can Jones and Favell do? Howe is going to bump draft Brenton Hobson on the run up here, and Jones takes advantage, gets up the inside of both of our leaders, but lifts off, saves a bit of fuel, and he's going to slip back through into that third spot.
I'm actually surprised he even went to try go for the move there with the fact that he had some he had it very easy, and the fact that he could have just lifted off and saved him more fuel.
Oh, Justin Howe getting into the back of Brenton Hobson, almost sent him off the track. That's big contact there between our race leaders. Hopefully that doesn't erupt into something more dramatic. Justin Howe is looking incredibly aggressive here behind Brenton Hobson. Ryan Jones has run a little wide, allowed Gregory Favell up the inside, but it looks like Favell has gotten that covered. He's going to go massively defensive. Daniel Stevens going to try and take advantage of the draft as Howie up the inside of Hobbo moves ahead into the braking zone, and Favell's gone very deep. Just avoids getting that thing spun around on the apex. Hobson going to try and challenge for the lead once again, but I'm thinking at this point he might want to be behind Justin Howe in order to save a bit of extra fuel. Well, he's obviously not listening to us because he's just moved back into the lead.
He's moved it back into the lead and clearly trying to stay at the front of this field because he wants to try and break a gap, but that clearly is a little bit difficult with the fact that that draft is so strong on the way down the back straight. He's probably actually not aware of the fact that there's a fuel situation going on, so if he's not aware, he's going to be in real strife come the moment where he's going to have to bring it down to the lane, and he's going to drop down the order. As a result, is Ryan Jones still getting pressure from behind from Favell, who looked to the inside, but didn't quite get the move done.
Hobbo's bulk saving, that's why we're all so close.
Righto, there's the answer from Ryan Jones as, have a look at Justin Howe. He's vaulted ahead and tried his best to go for the lead there. But now, Brenton Hobson trying his best now to hold on to this lead while saving that fuel. No move from Justin Howe. It's another bump draft on the run into the corner. Jones lifting off early, almost allowing Favell alongside him. This is a very intriguing race we're seeing at the moment as Daniel Stevens tries on Favell. A little bit of a bump from behind, but no changes of position for the time being. It's certainly been the most dramatic race of the night so far with the most crashes. We barely saw any crashing in race 1, one crash in race 2. All of them running wide though in the toe of the boot. It's allowed Hobbo to skip away slightly. Jones, Favell, Stevens. Favell and Stevens making bumper-to-bumper contact. And Favell almost getting sent around there. Jones almost staying in the middle of the road, but moving to the racing line to take the corner. And everyone bumper-to-bumper through the heel of the boot once again. It's all a waiting game between these drivers. Have to wait and see if anyone's going to make any kind of move. You'll have to wait till the final lap, or maybe now if you're Daniel Stevens, just bumping Gregory Favell out of the way in the left-hander coming back onto the main circuit. And Sam Devantier stuck on the outside of Damien Westbrook. Westbrook moves ahead.
He certainly does with that move. A little bit of elbows out racing there from Daniel Stevens because he knows he needs to get to the back of those top three with the fact that those behind are all very much fighting very hard. So if he can get to the back of Ryan Jones, then he's going to be in a very good place. As Howe's to the inside of Hobbo for the lead of the race, and Favell to the inside of Stevens at turn 1, and even Westbrook trying to have a go as well.
Yeah, almost looked like Favell went too deep there, but he's managed to keep the position there over Stevens, and now it's going to be a fight between all of those guys for those lower positions in the top 10. Justin Howe into the lead. Is Hobbo going to get him right back here on the straight, or is he going to return the favour and give him the bump draft? Looks like he's actually lifting off further down the straight, not going for the bump draft, and actually leaving a bit of a gap between himself and Howie, lifting off early into the carousel, as well as, oh my goodness, just behind Stevens and Westbrook. Very close racing between those guys. Stevens forced wide. Westbrook is going to move up there into 5th place. Sam Devantier trying to go for that 6th spot, but Daniel Stevens, wily racer on the inside, keeps it together.
Most definitely does keep it together and look to the inside of Westbrook. It wasn't quite close enough to get that move done, but certainly is trying to still make his way to that top three, who now have Ryan Jones all over their tail. As Favel's going to try go around the outside of Jones on the way through, but not quite going to be able to get done.
And defensive move from behind Damien Westbrook, Daniel Stevens. And Stevens trying up the inside of Mr. Westbrook, who has gotten his line compromised in the middle of the corner, and that's going to allow Mr. Stevens up alongside him as Favel continues to pressure at the top three. Contact between Stevens and Westbrook, and Damien forced to lose a bit of speed, goes up the inside of Devantier and absolutely clobbers him. Devantier into the wall. That's the next big crash of the race, and that's any chance of a good result for Sam Devantier gone.
Yeah, really unfortunate for that incident to happen. So he's going to end up dropping well down the order. As a result, he's going to get back into racing eventually, but not what he will have wanted at all.
Well, then we continue. Thanks to that incident, the top four have broken away from the rest of the field. It is only Stevens and Westbrook, maybe with Philip Howe trailing behind them. Perhaps he can get some semblance of a draft and make himself a nuisance up there in the lower reaches of the top six. But our top four all together now, as Hobbo tries to move up the inside, but not quite there on Justin Howe. Who is it going to be? Brenton Hobson right on the throttle out of the carousel and up the inside of Justin Howe, coming into the ankle, I would say, of the boot. This downhill descending left-hander that opens up on the exit. Howe again off the track, as he's been quite a few times tonight. A little bit later on the brakes than Hobson, and just avoids making contact, but Hobson is going to keep that outside line going and get another fantastic exit. There's nothing that Howe can do in response to that. Favel and Jones, meanwhile. Jones sticking in the middle of the road, going defensive. Favel lifts off early as it's side by side between Howe and Hobson. But Brenton, once again, with the straight line exit, maintaining it, keeping the lead. Fantastic racing at the moment.
Yeah, actually surprised Hobbo even went for the move there, with the fact that he was sitting behind Howe before, saving a little bit of fuel. And you have to remember, he's probably the one who's burnt the most fuel as well. So if anything, he's probably wanting to sit behind people and save more fuel to end up back in the same sort of boat as everybody else. But nevertheless, he's made that move and back to the lead of the race. And Jones getting harassed by Favel as well, and was on the tail of it. Justin Howes have got our first pitter in the form of Damon Westbrook.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that might be a penalty as opposed to fuel, because remember Westbrook was involved in a couple of incidents just before, particularly that one with Sam Devantier. So that might be race control saying, no, naughty boy, come in for a drive-through penalty. Looks like he's avoiding the pit boxes here, and he's just passed his own. So that is a penalty for Damien Westbrook, falling back then into 11th spot, thanks to that contact with Sam Devantier. The top four still together, though, coming onto the back straight. Justin Howes getting pushed by Ryan Jones, and they are now level again with Brenton Hobson as Howie goes for the move. Favel tries around the outside of Jones coming into the carousel, and they're 2 by 2 almost on the exit of the corner, with Howe just moving ahead of Hobbo. Devantier and Morganti side by side. Devantier trying to recover after getting hit off by Damien Westbrook, and Riccardo Morganti trying his best to keep himself in with a chance of keeping this position, but Devantier, I think, is going to get that move done. Justin Howe moving to the inside, with Favel now at the inside of Jones. I mean, we know how this is going to turn out.
Yeah, they certainly do, and Jones is going to not give this one up easy, and he's going to make Favel work for it. Goes defensive as he clears Favel and will keep that position. Nearly had a go at Hobbo as well, did Ryan Jones, on the way through that corner there, but decided to just back out of it and sit in behind. But it's very, very close between them, and nearly a little bit of contact between all of them really there.
Daniel Stevens is now back in contact with our top four. It is now a top 5 battle for the win, and they'll be coming up to start their penultimate lap on this particular occasion. The top 4 only covered by 0.3 of a second there. This is fantastic racing we're seeing in the Pro Truck Showdown at Watkins Glen. Justin Howe moves all the way to the inside down the front straight. Brenton Hobson not trying to follow the draft as Jones, oh, that's pretty deep into turn 1, going for the move there on the reigning second place in the driver's standings. Brenton Hobson, contact on the exit, and they're going to be side by side through the S's. Justin Howe will skip away, but he's not going to have any assistance with regards to fuel. Brenton Hobson moving ahead of Ryan Jones back into second place, and Favell and Stevens are going to start smelling blood here.
Yeah, they certainly are, as Hobo actually just brushed the wall there at the top of the S's, and that's going to leave him vulnerable as they head down the back straight. It's going to close that gap up even more for Daniel Stevens, so he's sitting pretty just in behind this entire pack. Jones to the inside though, locked up, trying to pull it up, just going to manage to hold on to that with thanks to a little bit of contact from behind from Val by the looks of it. So lucky to get away with that one, but that could have been so much worse.
Yeah, and lucky that that Brenton Hobson wasn't hit off the track there. That was very fortunate, actually, that contact worked out all right for both Jones and Hobson. But it does mean that it's another short opportunity lost for the drivers to make themselves a nuisance to Justin Howe. Bit of oversteer for Jones in the middle of the toe of the boot as Brenton Hobson with the run out of that right-hander. On the outside of Justin Howe coming into the heel, they are level on brakes, and Hobbo's going to hold it round the outside, get on the throttle just a little bit earlier. Wider line, straighter steering, that's what that gets you. Back into the lead for the number 88. This is anyone's game here in the final race of the night at Watkins Glen. And they'll be just coming up to the white flag in a couple of corners. Who is it going to be? We genuinely don't know. But the top 2 have broken away slightly from 3rd, 4th and 5th. That's going to change, obviously, when we get to the next couple of straights. But white flag time. Brenton Hobson is going to lead across the line, but will he be in that position in 2 minutes and 10 seconds time? Let's find out. Justin Howe moving to the inside, almost going for a move at turn 1, but thinks better of it. Hobbo using all of the curb, a little bit of a runoff there, a nice smooth line on the exit. Justin Howe takes to the grass. Here's where the draft really comes into play. Do these guys have enough fuel to make it one more lap? Are they still going to have to save fuel on this final lap? We'll find out. Brenton Hobson holding on just by a thread here to the lead of the race. Justin Howe's going to move out to the inside for the move at the carousel. Jones is going to try and follow him here. Almost 3 wide. Oh, just a few millimeters away from making it 3 wide as there's contact between Hobson and Howe, with Jones on the inside, briefly moving up into second. We'll see if Hobson can get this position back. A little bit later on the brakes than Jones, and contact to boot, moves back into second. Daniel Stevens has finished on the podium here in all 3 races tonight, but doesn't look like that's going to be a thing for him this time round, with Favell in the way, as well as Jones. Hobson trying to get the power down there on the outside, but Justin Howe got a pretty good exit that time round. He's going to stick to the inside through the boot. Hobson moving to cover off the advance of Ryan Jones. A bit later on the brakes, Brenton Hobson going super deep into the corner. He's lost a bit of momentum there at the wrong time. Justin Howe is going to protect the inside here, coming into the left-hander. And Jones there, running a little bit wide. He could open himself up to an attack from Favell in the last couple of corners. No, he's going to cover him off nicely. 2 turns to go. Now only 1. It's Justin Howe in the lead. Wasn't able to make the move for the win at the final corner, and Brenton Hobson is not far up enough to make it work this time. So Justin Howe, it looks like, is going to come across the line to finally take a race victory in the racing here at Watkins Glen tonight. It is Justin Howe, Brenton Hobson and Ryan Jones finally getting onto the podium. That is a good night's work there for Ryan Jones. Gregory Favell going to come across the line in 4th, and Daniel Stevens started 3rd, but ultimately 5th. There is Gavin Sadler crossing the line just behind Philip Howe. Up to 6th and 7th for those guys, which is certainly a good profit.
Yeah, it certainly is, considering they started all the way down the back of the field, all the way down in 11th and 13th. So there's some very, very big moves there and a very, very good way to finish the night off. But there is your finishing order. Justin Howe's going to take away the race win from Brenton Hobson. Ryan Jones rounds out the podium for Val 4th, with Stevens rounding out the top 5, and then Philip Howe, Sadler, Trezise, Devantier, and Morganti rounding out the top 10.
And Damien Westbrook, thanks to a penalty, has to settle for 11th. Todd Maxfield as well, finishing down the order. And our sole retirement from this race, Ben Snell, after that huge incident in the boot section, flipped over, terminal damage. Looks like he wasn't able to make it. Well, there we go. That is the start of yet another 6-week season for the Pro Truck Showdown, and we're going to be broadcasting it every Tuesday night for the next 6 weeks here on SimSpeed TV. We can't tell you what the next track is going to be because it is a surprise. Only gets revealed on the day of the event, and we're going to find out at the same time as all of the drivers. We certainly hope that you enjoyed the racing tonight. If this is anything to go by, this is going to possibly be the cleanest and most exciting season of the Pro Truck Showdown yet. I can't wait to see where this season goes. Thanks once again to Scumander Coffee Mug and Hot Toddy's heating installs as you see the incident that took Ben Snell out of race 3. And a great round win for Brenton Hobson with 2 firsts and a second. Justin Howe with 2 seconds and a first. It's going to be a very tight championship battle. I'm Reese Gardner, Cameron Dance alongside me, and Ryan Jones making a couple of appearances in the commentary box to bark at us in correction, with Jay Kennedy making everything happen behind the scenes, bringing the stream to you on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Bye for now for us at SimSpeed TV.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world like Ralph Alla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.